So for those of us who sometimes have some sillies to shake out, or sometimes have some tension to manage, let's start with a game. Let's start with a mindful game. I'd like you all, for those of you who are game, to create an imaginary bubble. Let's see, can we see you make a bubble like this? Reaching high, reaching across. You don't want to bump into anybody else's bubble. No popping each other's bubbles. Low, high, like this. Okay, now let's put our arms out. Relax your shoulders. On the count of 3, I would love it if you could just shake. Shake the sillies out, shake. 1, 2, 3. Hands on your tummies. Lower your shoulders. Feel your breathing. In slow motion, let's raise our hands again. Slow motion, and on the count of 3, shake. Shake the sillies out, and 1, 2, 3, drop. Lower your shoulders. Feel your feet against the ground. Your rear against the seat. And in slow motion, like a slow motion movie, let's raise our hands one last time and shake. Shake the sillies out. 1, 2, 3, drop. And just breathe. And let's just settle into the room, into this moment, right here and now. Now, I don't know about you, but the whole feeling in the room feels a little different to me. And that's a strategy that we use with children, and I'm looking for the clicker. Here's the clicker. That's a strategy that we use with children that we will talk about a little bit later, where we toggle between movement and stillness, going back and forth between controlled movement and stillness to help settle ourselves when we're feeling a little overly excited or upset. So, everyday freedom. Maybe some of you are wondering what I'm talking about when I'm talking about freedom in this context. And what I'm talking about is freedom from emotional reactivity the best we can. Freedom from pattern thought, freedom from biased thinking. And these kinds of emotional freedom are really available to all of us. And the good news is that that type of freedom can be trained. Now, we'll often talk in a presentation like this one about all of the useful benefits and skills that are developed through the practice of mindfulness and awareness, and we will get into that. But I want to stop, and right up front, I want to talk about a different thing that often gets missed in the context of mindful awareness, and that's the experience of mindfulness. Now, I bet absolutely every one of you have had that experience, and the next time, and when I talk to Jill after our presentations, I want to ask her, because a lot of what she talks about in her presentation sounds like the experience of an aha moment where you feel like you are one with absolutely everything around you. Where for just a minute, your sense of self as you know it slips away, and you just feel like maybe part of the nature that you're walking in. I don't know, maybe you feel like you just have become one with the music. Maybe you're just not thinking about the music you're listening to anymore. Maybe it's just in a non-conceptual state. Maybe when you're in a relationship with a loving relationship with your children or your partner, you just feel connected in that way. These aha moments are it's the experience of everyday freedom. And that too skills can be developed that help you touch into those. Now, we train these skills that we're going to be talking about under a general umbrella of attention, balance, and compassion. And under attention, balance, and compassion, we train specific life skills. And I want you to look and see that focusing is at the center of these life skills that we train. And the reason focusing is at the center, and you see that that circle is a little bit bigger than the others, is because attention and focusing is necessary for these other skills to work. And the other skills that we develop through mindful games are quieting. Those are kind of quieting and calming games to help quiet and calm the nervous system, seeing what's happening within and around you more clearly, reframing. All of us can use a little reframing sometime, and our little ones can use some help reframing. I understand that it feels like that to you. I understand you see it that way, but is it possible that there's another perspective? And when we reframe toward caring and connecting. Now, how we train is through inner work. But when we talk about inner work, sometimes it feels very inner. Sometimes it feels very internal and all about us. And the inner work is very helpful in general, but it's particularly helpful if it is bookended by motivation and by action. So what do we mean when we talk about motivation in this context? Well, I was listening to Jill talk about purpose and meaning in her presentation, and purpose and meaning is often very much like what we're talking about when we talk about motivation in the classical contemplative traditions. And there's one thing that is in common of these types of purpose, meaning, or motivation, and that's that these are not selfish. These are helpful to us, to be sure, but also helpful to other people. Now, when you're working with caregivers, this is an extremely important concept to get across. And the reason it's so important to get that concept across is because caregivers, and I know a lot of you are either caregivers or work with them, so I'm curious to see if you agree with me on this. Caregivers will do almost anything, even something as crazy as mindfulness or meditation, if they think it's going to help the kids in their charge or the people in their charge. But ask them to take the time out for the practice themselves, and usually that's not something they're going to prioritize. Usually what they'll say is that if I really want to help my kids, or if I really want to help my family, I will spend a little more time with them, spend a little more time working, spend a little more time making money, but I'm certainly not going to spend more time sitting on a cushion off by myself. Well, we're going to talk about how mindfulness and meditation isn't all sitting on a cushion off by yourself. But even beyond that, I want to talk about reframing this idea of motivation to one of a ripple effect. The idea, if we're just a little bit less neurotic, if we just have a little bit longer fuse, if we're just a little less reactive, how that's going to affect absolutely everyone around us. So the motivation for our inner work, the motivation for taking time out for self-care, is to help ourselves to be sure, but ultimately that helping ourselves helps absolutely everyone around us. And that kind of motivation, purpose, and meaning will help strengthen the inner work itself. So what do we do in this kind of inner work? What we do is we become familiar with our minds. And when we look at what's happening in our minds, what do we see? We see pleasant things, we see unpleasant things, we see neutral things, and we look at them all. We become familiar with them all. And through that process, some pretty miraculous things can start to happen. So one of the ways we talk to kids about mindfulness and help them understand, especially our concrete thinkers, help them understand somewhat complex concepts, is if we use different animals to talk about different aspects of our inner worlds, different qualities. I like to use the giraffe for mindfulness and awareness because of the long neck and how the giraffe can kind of look around. And so mindful awareness is really a key component to this type of work. Remember, it's not the whole thing. It's attention, balance, and compassion, but it's key. So mindfulness has gotten popular. I don't know if you guys have noticed that. And it's, I mean, I've been in this world for 20 years, and if anyone had ever told me 20 years ago that mindfulness would be so popular now with kids, I would have not believed them, but it has, and in many ways it's a blessing, but in some ways it's not. And one of the ways that it's not is this blurring of definitions. So I encourage any of you who work with mindfulness programs or who are developing mindfulness programs to become very, very clear about what you mean by these words mindfulness and awareness. For the purposes of my work, I define mindfulness as a stance of attention where we know where our mind is and our state of mind in real time. Now, I'm not going to say that to a 4-year-old, but I will talk to the caregivers about that so that they understand that that's what we mean by mindfulness. So right now, my mind is quite focused, and it's focused on you guys because I'm here, and my state of mind is a little bit high energy because I'm talking in front of a whole bunch of people, and I think there's a video camera up there, so that makes my state of mind a little high energy. My body's a little low energy because I didn't get a lot of sleep last night. So my mindfulness is being able to track that, where my attention is and where my state of mind is, and the mind and the body both. Awareness, that part of mindful awareness, is a little bit different. Awareness is a way of tapping into those qualities inside of ourselves, a way of embodying, a way of being in the world with attention, balance, and compassion. Here's another definition for mindfulness that I really, really love, and it's an easy one to remember. It's that mindfulness, as the stance of attention of mindfulness, is like looking in a pond and seeing the reflection. Nothing more. It's just the reflection. There's nothing clouding it. There's no stories, there's no add-ons, just a clear reflection in a pond. I also like this definition a lot because it helps us begin with our older children, with our teenagers and adults, people to start seeing that this activity of the mind that we see, those reflections there, the reflections of everything from the lion to the bunny rabbit to the snail, the reflections of our anger from our patience for our happiness, they are all activities of the mind. They're fleeting, and they're not really substantial in the way that they are a solid part, unchanging of who we are. So simple images like, oh, look at that. These are the images of, in a mirror of your thoughts and emotions, helps us all start to see them as a little more fleeting and a little more transitory and a little less solid. Now, focus is a very important part of mindfulness. And the development of focus, regardless of the stance of attention, I loved hearing earlier that attention is not just one thing. Types of attention aren't just, there isn't just one type of attention either. But the development of attention, the development of focus, starting with the development of the capacity to focus on one thing to the exclusion of all else, is an important component of mindful awareness and something we teach young children as early as 3 years old. And distraction is also a very important part of attention training, right? Learning that you're distracted, noticing you're distracted, well, that's time to congratulate yourself, right? If you notice you're distracted, what are you? You're mindful. You know where your mind is, and then recovering from that distraction. Noticing, recovering is as much part of attention training as staying focused all the time. Here's another one of the inner qualities that we talk to kids about, and it's wisdom. It's the idea that all of us have these qualities inside, and one of them is mindfulness and awareness, and one of them is wisdom. And we teach mindful games to help kids get in touch with wisdom, which are the life skills of seeing and reframing. Compassion, another extraordinary quality that all of us have inside of us. All we need to do is recognize it. And mindful games teach these life skills of caring and connecting, or compassion, in a way that are fun and playful. Now remember, compassion, we often think about compassion as being something we do for somebody else. We're kind to somebody else. But in this type of work, self-compassion, kindness to self, is as important as kindness to others. It's all part of the same thing. We don't need to be binary about it. It doesn't need to be one or the other. It's all part of a whole. Wisdom and compassion are often compared in classical training to the two wings of the bird, with the idea that we need both to fly. So the idea is that we need both wisdom and compassion to live one of those lives we're talking about, where we embody attention, balance, and compassion. Snails are another one of the animals we use when we talk to kids about qualities inside, and snails are a good reference for patience. And patience is another quality that's very, very important for kids. It's a quality we can tap into, and it's a quality that helps us with teaching kids the whole range of life skills, from focusing to quieting to seeing to reframing to caring and to connecting. This set of inner qualities, mindful awareness, wisdom, compassion, patience, and also the watchdog, who we're going to talk about in a second, these are inner qualities that are in all of us all the time. And when we tap into them, they are the lantern that lights us the way toward the compass toward our best self. So these are qualities we can train and that we can develop and that we can relax and have some fun with using animals, playful animals with kids. Now, here's the common problem. It is kind of hard to tap into these inner qualities of wisdom and compassion and patience when someone or both of you are having a meltdown, right? And most people who come to the practice of mindfulness and awareness for kids in families or in schools really want help with power struggles, with meltdowns, with calming strategies, and they want that help fast. So that brings us to our watchdog. Remember, we were talking about these different qualities we have? One of the qualities we have is our watchdog, which is our nervous system. Fantastic, important quality because it keeps us safe. But here's the thing about the watchdog. Sometimes it thinks that things are not safe when they aren't as bad as they seem. And that can trigger our watchdog to go into fight, flight, freeze, or forget it. Now, how many of you have heard the forget it phrase before? I like adding forget it to the freeze mode, especially if you work with teenagers, because we see it all the time, right? How often are you seeing this as either a parent or a teacher? And if your response to this is, oh boy, here comes somebody who's defiant, then your response to that verbal or that visual cue, not verbal cue, might be quite a bit different than if you saw this visual cue and thought, oh wow, he or she is overwhelmed. So if you start thinking about this forget it mode as part of the nervous system response to danger, and then you see this defiant look, seemingly defiant look, as a signal of overwhelm, all of a sudden, compassion and understanding tends to emerge naturally, and we relate differently to other people. So fight, flight, freeze, and forget it. Now, the great thing about our watchdog, just like any pet, is it can be trained, and it can be trained in mindfulness. And the training in mindfulness can help the watchdog notice when something's happening and it actually is dangerous, and in that case, just completely let the resources go toward the reactive mode. We don't want to have our hand stuck in a fire and be thinking, should I pull it out? Should I not pull it out? I'm going to really do some critical thinking around this. But it can also notice when we're a little bit anxious and not really that much in danger. And then there's some wonderful mindful games and mindfulness-based strategies that help us calm and settle an overly excited nervous system. One of my favorites is this snow globe, and I know Vicki loves this snow globe too. So let me show you how this snow globe works. And the strategy we're modeling here is we're noticing that our nervous system is a little bit upset. We're a little bit overly excited or upset. And so we're noticing that, and we're moving our attention away from what we're thinking about to something we're seeing. So let's imagine right now all the snow in the globe is the stress and strain of modern life, right? And let's just keep an eye on the snow. And when the snow is all worked up, if we've got a lot of thoughts and emotions and fears worked up, can you see through the snow globe? No, right? It's cloudy. It's a little bit, our minds are a little bit like that too. But if we just settle, watch the snow settle, lower your shoulders, feel your feet against the ground, stay with it for a while, what starts to happen? Look at the snow settles, and then can you see through to the other side? Yeah, you can. Now, did the snow in the globe go away? No. I wish I could tell you that mindfulness would take away all of the problems and the stress and the strain that we have in life. But what I can say is that mindfulness can help us settle that so that we can see what's happening within and around us more clearly and make smart choices that are in our own best interest and the best interest of the people around us too. 2 other quick points. 1, look at here. The snow in the snow globe, it can all look kind of beautiful too, right? And our thoughts and emotions are like that too. We can have beautiful thoughts, we can have beautiful emotions, but sometimes even beautiful thoughts and emotions can cloud our judgment. So we can have some tools like this that help our glitter settle and help us make those choices. I make that point about the thoughts and emotions being beautiful is because sometimes people view mindfulness as a nice big wet blanket that we can use to just dump over our emotions and pretend they're not there and stifle them. And actually the opposite is true. With mindfulness, we try to develop, especially with our less concrete thinkers, with our older children and teenagers and adults, we develop a spacious mental awareness where we notice the full catastrophe, the whole Zorba the Greek up there. All the thoughts, the emotions, the difficult ones, the pleasant ones, and we can contain and hold them all without getting busy thinking about them and reacting to them. There's also great strategies, mindfulness-based strategies that help us do just that. First, you can just pay extra attention to the exhale and purposeful breathing. That has a way of calming the nervous system. You can toggle between movement and stillness, just like we did at the very beginning of this presentation. You can also visualize something else that Jill was talking about. You can visualize a positive outcome. You can, even if the world around you doesn't seem so friendly, even if the world around you doesn't seem so happy, you can imagine a place where you are happy, where other people are happy, where people have enough food to eat, where people are having a lot of fun. And these types of guided visualizations help us think about things a little bit different and reframe. When we're settled down, then we have the opportunity to look at our emotions, even the scary ones and the unpleasant ones, a little bit differently. We can start looking at them as visitors, as guests, like at a dinner party, and we can say hello to them. We can start to get to know them better and be friends to them, knowing that just like visitors, they're going to come, they're going to go. They too are transitory, and they too change. And when we get a better idea of emotions as transitory, as fleeting, as changing, as not that substantial, just like the reflections in the mirror we've been talking about, that helps us lower our shoulders and be more comfortable with them and less afraid. And then we can relax. And this is one beautiful thing about this type of work, is that it's about relaxing and having fun, connecting with that part of ourselves, the wisdom, the compassion, the patience, and then comes the action. We start seeing things a little bit differently. Is it a duck? Is it a rabbit? Could it be both? We have more of an open mind. Is it a 6? Is it a 9? Does some of what we see depend on where we're standing? And sometimes, even if we're mindful, we're going to make mistakes. Even the most mindful person is going to make mistakes. Mindfulness is not about perfection, it's about presence. And what's important is that we notice when we make a mistake and we go back and we repair. And then what happens? Then we start developing a comfort level with mindfulness where we drop brief moments of awareness in throughout the day. During transitions, at the dinner table, we've heard about routines, bedtime, dinner table, those are all great times to drop mindful awareness in. And what happens? Sometimes those little aha moments we were talking about, those moments of feeling like you're just part of a huge, huge universe instead of a small little speck, that just emerges naturally, that experience of mindfulness. And when that happens, what usually bubbles up is just a deep, enduring sense of gratitude, a sense of being grateful for the whole catastrophe, as I've said 2 or 3 times. Just being grateful for all of it. And that's not a gratitude that shoves away the bad stuff. It's a gratitude that can acknowledge the bad, but include the good. And then that's how transformation happens. And if there's anything that makes me excited enough to do this work for 20-odd years. It's this possibility of transformation through the practice of mindfulness and awareness. So thank you for your attention.